Okay, back on YouTube here on a Monday. It's been about a week since I did a video. The last one was about John Mayer, a little bit about watch collecting and the John Mayer effect. This one will have nothing to do with John Mayer. This is everything about seeing if you could find yourself to ask the question, what's everything to you? And what brings that up is I was watching a YouTube video yesterday. I think it was produced by Gibson Guitars, and it was an interview with, or a documentary interview with Noel Gallagher of Oasis. Right from the very beginning, you know, I don't know if you've ever watched any interviews with Noel, but I mean, he's a very interesting character to say the least. He's a rock star. He's seen it all. He's been there, done that. And him looking back, he brings up a lot of interesting things, particularly for new artists. And the one thing that struck me when I was watching it immediately was he was talking about how where he grew up, there was really nothing else going on. It was bands and music and maybe a little bit of FA football on weekends, but there was never like any non-stop continuous coverage like there is today of everything. So there were minimal distractions, and he's another guy like me or Rick Beato or whoever yelling at the clouds about attention spans and focus and how distracted musicians and or artists can be, and how distracted fans can be. But the one thing he said that was very telling to me was he said that bands and guitars was everything. And he literally, you could see it in his heart that it was everything. And I can relate to that. I felt that when I got into the recording studio. That felt to me like everything. I didn't know it exactly then, and that's kind of what he's talking about in this interview, is that you don't know it then. You know it later that, oh yeah, that was everything to me. The sooner you can recognize it, the sooner you'll maybe have a little bit of peace in that you feel good about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and in some ways you'll realize that there was really almost no other decision for you to make. It was everything to you. The other thing he talks about I could relate to is that he's still learning the guitar. And here I am in the same boat 40 years later, and then some. It's almost like the guitar is there and there's some hesitation sometimes to pick it up because it's like, uh-oh, I know what that thing can do to me. I know that could literally take the next few hours of my day and put me down a path of sheer bliss or sheer frustration or something. But you're walking into a room when you grab that guitar or sit down at the keyboard or even turn on the mixing environment and start mixing a track. You're opening the door to God only knows what. It could be awful, it could be great. And what keeps us coming back is that whole feeling of that it's everything. This is what you connect with. Another thing he talked about was doing the gigs, early gigs with the band, how each gig, he said they did about a dozen and they were playing about once a week. Each show, he said they would toss out the song that was shit the week before. So this was their weeding out process. He clearly says in the interview that they didn't know that this was going to be their first record or this batch of songs for their first record because they didn't have a record deal or anything. So they were weeding things out and they didn't know it. And that's one of those things you can relate to as an artist or as a producer or musician, that you need to be doing work so that you can find what ones don't work. I work on a mix. At a certain point, you realize like that track or that effect or that EQ doesn't work, and you need to do the rebuild and do the rework something. And that's kind of what he's talking about in that when they're doing a show, reading the crowd, even if it's 10 people, like you said there was. If there's 10 people there, you got to read the crowd and say, or read the band, even the feeling of the band. Like, hey, how did you guys feel when you were done with that set? Did it work? Or should we either get rid of that song for now, or trash it, or rework it, and try it again the following week? That's where I think it comes into the idea that it needs to be a feeling amongst the band, or it needs to be a feeling for the artist, because you can look to the audience for their response and then shape your set to them or shape your album or shape your production to the audience. But suppose the audience only likes ballads. Are you going to shape your set and only do 10 ballads? No. First of all, you'd want to quit. Second of all, maybe you don't want to write 10 ballads. Maybe you couldn't write 10 ballads. So there has to be some sort of give and take so that you can figure out where your path is, how you're going to get things going, how you're going to connect with your audience and do it from a place that is coming from the heart. So in other words, you're not doing 8 songs that you don't like, but just because the crowd got off on them, you're doing them. And when they're hit records and you have 10 hit ballads, then you have a little bit of an issue. That was sort of like the Whitney Houston effect. She had a lot of hit ballads. I know several people that went to shows of hers back in the day, and they said, you know, it was a little bit rough because she had to do 12 ballads. In the course of a 20-some song set, more than half of them being ballads, it kind of turns into a slight snooze fest. I'll go back a little bit for the Mayer crowd, if you're still in there. Like, you know, there was definitely some John Mayer fans that got their boutique coiled guitar cables in a knot because, you know, I said some things about John Mayer that they were tweaked by. Like I've said before, and I said in that video, he's an incredible artist. He's a great guitar player, put out some unbelievable material. He's still touring, he's still doing everything. I was just saying, I think that, you know, that maybe he's not the greatest watch spokesman. Like I said, big fan of John Mayer's, sort of fan of Ed Sheeran, and I wasn't trying to say that John Mayer, first of all, in the title, I even said, did John Mayer wreck his career? I don't think he wrecked his career. I think his career is where it's kind of on a natural path. And he's doing some cool things doing the Grateful Dead gig and whatever other collabs he does. But, you know, things run their course, as does hip hop. And I think hip hop is going to be my next topic, as I will discuss why I feel as though hip hop is no longer what it was, and it's never gonna be. It's never coming back the way it was. Like it or not, it's not counterculture anymore, it's not subculture anymore, and I'm getting too far into it for this video, and I'll save that for the next one.